Hey guys, Lytane here, and it's still Utawarerumono month, and we have another anime to look at. So let's see if Utawarerumono The False Faces is worth it. The False Faces was released in October 2015 in Japan, a mere 3 weeks after Mask of Deception, which this anime is based off of. Produced by Aqua+, the creators of the game, this show was made by White Fox, the same company that did the first anime and the Steins Gate animes as well. Man, they really must love doing visual novels. The story here is pretty much the same as the game. A man wakes up on a frozen cold mountain and has no memory of what's going on. He is saved by a woman named Kuon, who decides to take him under her wing, a guardian of sorts, because he is utterly hopeless. He is lazy and weak, and how could he even survive in the world? As he has amnesia, she gives him the name Haku, and they begin their grand adventure together, stopping at a nearby town, helping out the locals, and then eventually heading to the capital to find work. Along the way, they meet a host of crazy people. They all have unique perks and attitudes, and it isn't long before they find themselves in plots far bigger than they realize. So come and watch and see if you can see the truth amongst these false faces. The False Faces, being an adaptation of a visual novel, had to cut a lot of the game's plot and story in order to fit within the confines of a 25-episode season. The core of the story is there, but a lot of the nuance is cut in order to drive that main plot. Now, I can't help but compare the two of them, but first I'll give you my opinions as it stands alone. So let's start with the animation of the show. I think it's pretty darn good. The characters all have a great and distinct design to them. The world is beautiful with nice backdrops and locations. The movement between everyone is good. Nothing mind-blowing, but it's just nice to see that it's fluid. I think the show looks really great, and you could easily get lost in the world that it's painted before you. The Japanese voice acting is almost identical to the games, which is fantastic. Each actor plays their parts really well and has their own distinct personality. So going from game to show or the other way around really won't shock you. Unless of course you listen to the English dub. Yeah, this was made in English as well, and I know most people will flame me for this, but I did watch most of the series in English. It's just much easier to write down notes when the show is playing, and it's a deep curiosity of mine to hear names and characters in English when it's always been Japanese to me up until that point. But how did they do? Well, mostly bad. Haku's VA, Craig Daly, hadn't had much experience before the show, and it does show. Haku was meant to be a lazy kind of guy, but Craig instead made him sound bored and disinterested for most of the show. It's all very flat instead of the energetic nuance that, forgive me, Kigi Fujiwara does to the role in the Japanese voice acting. Some of the supporting cast were also really bad, like Deko Pompo and Ugi, but the worst voice was Raiko, Brian Coupland's second ever VA role, and it shows. Just listen to it.
I wouldn't mind leaving that fat imbecile to die. I suppose we can't allow ourselves to lose all those men.
So yeah, I'd say listen to the Japanese if you're not stupid like me. So here are some other random thoughts. First, Sawara does another intro song for the show. 2, in fact, as they change it mid-season. The first is alright, the second one is better, but I like the opening from the first anime a whole lot more, but these two aren't bad. We also have her perform the outros as well, which is good. It keeps the overall feel of the series very consistent. Also, many of the characters have tails, and I was happy to see them being used in the show. Like when characters get scared, their tails react much like a cat's would. I was impressed with just how often they would use the tail in the shot and not just have it sort of sit there. I think the show does a good job of introducing the new characters, and some of them even get some great screen time, but many of the cast are then pushed into the background. With such a huge cast, this was bound to happen, but it still makes me sad. We get to spend a lot of time with Ukon, Haku, and Kuon, and quite a little bit of time with Ryutea and Atui, but everyone else is just sort of there for some quick story or for some jokes before fading away. That's a shame, as these characters are interesting, but the creators chose to focus on more of a core set of main characters for this story. In fact, the twins Sarana and Ururu are barely in this show, which is odd. I was also surprised with how much not safe for work content there was in the show. There are quite a few bath scenes here, and they aren't ashamed to show everything, and I was a little surprised, to be sure, and I can't show any of this on YouTube for obvious reasons. But as this is an adaptation, I do have to compare it to the source material, the game, so let's get it underway. Like I said, a lot of the story had to be cut from the show, and a lot of this was the slice of life scenes with the characters, which is sad. Haku would normally spend a lot of his free time with other people and having game-long stories with each of them, like making sweets with Rulu or trying to help Atui find love. While some of these did make it into the show, others are only referenced and many more are just gone. This makes most of the characters seem very shallow, and I get why they had to do this, but it does make me sad that so much had to be cut. We do have some major differences. The first is Kuon. They altered her love of ancient artifacts and exploration, and even her feelings for Haku. It isn't even clear if she found Haku on the mountain before the show starts or when we first see her discovering him. Most of her backstory is just left out of the show, and it isn't crucial, but I don't know why they cut most of it. Many characters were also altered slightly, like Atui's crazy bloodlust is gone and downplayed. Rulu has this crazy yaoi fetish where she's often fantasizing about the male characters just getting it on. That's not to say that all the changes are bad. A few are done for the better. Like, I love Kokopo in this anime, easily the best character of the show. From the crazy design and new little plot moments like having this friendship with Mukure from the first anime, it was just perfect. My favorite part of the whole show was when the bird slapped Rulu for being hysterical. It was so goddamn funny. Following on from that, there are a lot of great new scenes which I thought added to the overall story. In the anime, we get to see Ukon actually notice Haku and his clever behavior before they go to the city. I liked how they had to find Atui because she ran away, which is typical of her, which makes her introduction more involved in the plot and not just because she just happened to bump into Haku. The opposite of that is Kiru, who is now masked and hunting Atui for some reason. It's strange because he's a noble and I don't get why he's doing this. Also, Kirin, the jellyfish, is in like one episode. But all of these tiny changes for good and bad are bound to happen in order to make the story flow better. But there are like some major changes to the story as well, which do create a few problems with the plot. The first is the giant war in the middle of the show. The game uses it like a showcase to show just how powerful Yamato and the masks and generals are. And here it does have some of that, but it's to a diminished effect. Vurai even attacks a town of innocents. It's similar to the novel, but the main characters are there this time and they are only saved by magic. It is a great scene and it does bring the war into a more human perspective, but then this turns into the catalyst for Haku and his emotional struggle. The emotional crutch in the game was Haku's identity and responsibility to himself and the world, but all of that was cut from the show. Here the emotional crutch is the horrors of war on the innocent and how powerless he is to stop it. Both are fantastic ways to portray a character, don't get me wrong, but it does change the outcome of the character journey. Mask of Truth has a lot to do with war, and I feel like the Haku in the show isn't equipped to handle what he needs to do in the future. That also means the main mystery of the show, like who Haku is not handled very well. We get like one hint in the episodes leading up to it, and then just a full-on episode of exposition. It has to explain to us all of the details, and it doesn't hit nearly as hard. No build-up means the payoff is just weak, and Haku doesn't really react to it in a profound way, so it's just kind of lacking. I know they have time constraints, but this was very important to him. But here we come towards the end of the show, and the final battle, while in a different location, is so huge and epic. It's done so much better than the game, as you can see everybody moving and all the different camera angles. It's just great, it's so exciting. Also, a lot of time was spent on the escape after the battle, which was fun, but if they had to cut most of that, they could have easily done so and expanded upon the characters in early episodes. There are many plot holes and changes in the course of the show, and they will have to work hard to fix them if they ever make another season. Speaking of which, as of this moment, who knows if that will ever happen? The show was confirmed to be getting another season, but aside from that confirmation, there has been literally no news about it. With the passing of Haku's voice actor, it may not happen at all, so only time will tell. In my opinion, Utawarerumono The False Faces is worth it. for being a very enjoyable and fun story with interesting characters and an amazing world. The animation is good, the character designs are fantastic, and the movement is fluid and nice. While the story does have some strange pacing and a lot of the game it's based on was cut, I think the show was a lot of fun. Even with all the changes, a first-time viewer would not know what they were. The only big bad thing is the lack of character growth and development for the side characters. Now, if you had to pick between this and the visual novel, then of course pick the novel. It's literally better in almost every way. But in terms of adaptations, I think this was good and I'd love to see another season one day. So tell me what you thought about The False Faces. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you discover the show or the games first? And how did that affect your enjoyment of it? I see the show gets a lot of flack online from the community being one of the worst adaptations ever made, and had my doubts before going to watch it, but I thought it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. Anyway, don't forget to do all the stuff like liking and subscribing, commenting down below and whatever, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!